Greetings and salutations. I'm your boy Kami the Fated Saint, and this is Limited Series. Halloween is upon us, and I figured this is the right time to review a pilot, not to mention a reboot, of one of my favorite series of all time, The Munsters. And for those of you who are not familiar, allow me to provide this little in brief. The Munsters premiered on September 24th, 1964 on CBS. It ran for 2 seasons and was centered around the Munsters, a family that, apart from being mostly monsters of Universal fame, was pretty much your typical sitcom family. In it, we had our characters: Herman, the bumbling father in the guise of a Frankenstein monster; Lily, who was the usual sitcom mom, crossing a vampire/Bride of Frankenstein look; Grandpa, the eccentric family member who was the classic Dracula-styled vampire; Eddie, the son, who was a preteen werewolf; and Marilyn, who, well, let's not mince words here, she was Marilyn Monroe, who was also pretty popular at the time. Anyway, apart from this, however, they were pretty much the same sitcom family you would see on anything that was on at the time. And even though it didn't last too long, its popularity was pretty massive. It spawned 5 movies and a modern continuation of the show in the late 80s, early 90s, called The Munsters Today.
We're the monsters. We're the monsters. Oh, yeah.
The less we speak about that, the better. Oh, and before you ask, it was 3 seasons long, so The Munsters Today is not going to be on this show. So, you may be asking, what am I actually reviewing? Well, a year ago, a pilot aired on NBC, a new modern version of The Munsters, which was envisioned by Brian Fuller of Pushing Daisies fame. And that is the subject for today. So, pull out your fake fangs, get your lift leather boots, and we're going to dive right into Mockingbird Lane. We begin our episode at Haven. Wait, no. Sorry, that was hangover from last series. We actually begin our episode in the woods, where a troop of Boy Scouts called the Woodland Explorers are. As it turns out, someone has eaten all of their breakfast cereal, and they're looking within the troop for the culprit. This kid blames the token fat kid for it, and, oh, seems like it was actually him. Huh. I was expecting like a jump scare or something. Ah! So the troop is attacked and run off by a werewolf, and they wait in the car until morning? This seems an unwise choice when you're responsible for a bunch of kids. At least call the park ranger.
Where's Eddie Munster?
Worst scoutmaster ever. That brings us to 1312 Mockingbird Lane, where a realtor is showing the house to Marilyn Munster, played by Chastity Wakefield. And, well, this.
Any family?
Well, the sun shines more on this house than any other house in the neighborhood.
Not a feature we're looking for. What about that one?
Nice bait and switch. The realtor tries to dissuade her, but her mind is made up. Just listen.
It's not for sale. They're tearing it down.
But they haven't yet.
That's a horrible place. Horrible things happened there. They found dozens of graves in the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you could buy the lot once the grounds have been cleansed.
My aunt and uncle prefer pre-cleansed.
Miss, there may be dead homeless people in the walls.
Then they found a home after all.
Yeesh. Apparently the sale went through quickly, and we are greeted to this. Subtle. This is Herman Munster, played by Jerry O'Connell. He walks into Eddie and Marilyn checking out the place. Eddie is played by Mason Cook, by the way. He's suspicious as to the sudden move, and Herman comments it was to get away from the baby bear, and I'm doing air quotes, that attacked the troop. Eddie casually speculates.
Did Grandpa try to eat somebody again? Is that why we had to leave?
No, not Grandpa.
So, if you haven't guessed, Eddie in the reboot is unaware of his werewolf condition, but you also get a sense of pretty much what it was like in the original series, the abnormal being strangely normal to all these people. And dude, I want that staircase. Anyway, Eddie comments that Grandpa said he had a condition, like Marilyn, but then it cleared up, and says he likes being normal. Herman tells him to just say he likes being like his dad in front of Grandpa, and Eddie replies,
Which one of you?
This one of me.
And then we move on to some movers, dropping off 2 crates. They are more than a little creeped out, and then this.
Ay, Dios mío.
I'm with you there, dude. I'd peel off too. The rats form into Grandpa, played by Eddie Izzard. From the other crate, Mist pours forth and forms into Lily, played by Portia de Rossi. And right here, we have a very interesting take on the story. The basic story is that Herman let Grandpa do all of this experimentation and replace parts of him so that he could stay eternally young and look like Jerry O'Connell so that he can stay just as attractive as his eternally young wife, Lily. It's very obvious they're deeply in love, because next...
I wonder if this would have happened sooner if I breastfed.
That's awkward. Anyway, Lily wonders aloud if she would have been closer to Eddie if she had been more like a normal mom. They discuss whether or not to tell Eddie about being a werewolf, and we see one of the staples on Herman's heart burst. The next morning at breakfast, wait, is that Frankenstein-themed cereal? Subtle. Anyway, they all creepily dote on Eddie, who is about to go to school, which prompts Eddie to ask,
Is there something wrong with me?
That is exactly the kind of shame I do not want coming out of your mouth. The only one in this family who should feel shame is Marilyn, which she carries so beautifully.
Yeah, that's a running joke. Anyway, the talk takes a turn for the weird when Eddie mistakes their werewolf talk for puberty, and it's just awkward. Eddie leaves for school and Herman follows with his books. Eddie knows he's being lied to about something. The pain of this causes Herman's heart to fail, and he collapses. So it's nighttime now, and Grandpa jumpstarts Herman with a metal heart. Ha! So, anyway, Herman's pretty ticked that he doesn't have his heart and demands that Grandpa put it back and takes the metal one out. They also talk about Eddie, whom Herman doesn't want Grandpa's influence over. And then Grandpa replaces the heart. He tells Herman that he needs to make plans because his heart's not going to last very much longer. We go to a fluff scene of Grandpa and Marilyn looking at the neighborhood, which sets up Grandpa making shortcake cookies spiked with blood so he can distribute them throughout the neighborhood, including this fine house.
Oh, my name is Marilyn.
Hello.
This is my grandpa. Grandpa.
Hello.
You must call me D.
Get it? For Dracula. The lady here ain't having any of it, but her husband is more of the good neighbor sort, and more accepting of his gifts.
They're bloody good, aren't they?
I get it!
Shut it, Napa.
Grandpa then freezes the neighbor and notices that Marilyn said we, and was planning on staying. He expresses that he was planning on her leaving.
I was going to miss you, of course, but I was also going to be quite pleased you weren't here.
I'm touched that you'd miss me.
Awesome. He notes because she's so normal, it would mess with his groove since he's planning on starting to drink again, and yes, that's in air quotes as well. This is also one of the main jokes from the original series. Marilyn, who is based off of Marilyn Monroe, is actually the black sheep of the family, having been scared into normalcy once she was born, and the entire family, herself included, actually consider her rather homely looking. It's kind of weird because in the original series she would always lament that her general unattractiveness is what would keep boys from really getting into serious relationships with her, and not the monsters that she brought them home to. We then go to the Wildlife Explorer meeting where Eddie is meeting his new scoutmaster, Steve. Steve also meets Grandpa and Herman. There's some pleasantries, and he asks about Eddie's old pack. They skirt the subject in front of Eddie, but then Steve pulls Herman's aside.
I'm assuming there's a reason you don't want me to know Eddie's old pack number.
Pack 110.
Pack 110.
Pack 110?
Pack 110! 110? Group 110? Ugh.
They give the cover story, and then Lily enters.
Did your heart just skip a beat?
I guess we know where this is going. We are then out in the woods for... reasons? Actually, Grandpa and Marilyn are explaining the circle of life to Eddie. I guess it's an intro to werewolf type of deal. Anyway, this. Okay, but I really meant this.
Does anything eat the lion?
Grandpa.
It's nature.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Lily checks in on Eddie, and they talk about Grandpa's odd behavior, which brings Eddie to the question, if Grandpa eats big things, would his mom. She's honest and says she tries not to, but Eddie admits that he's happy he's not like her. Herman confronts Grandpa, and he's not too pleased, but gets distracted by the neighbor working on his house, and gives this great line.
Don't turn the neighbors into your blood slaves.
I love that that's a thing. They argue over Grandpa eating a lion. Herman admits that Eddie and his heart are the only two pieces of him left, and his heart is broken, and Eddie is changing. Grandpa notes that Steve has a perfect replacement, and Herman is horrified at the idea of stealing Eddie's pack leader's body parts, but not opposed. Oh, that was quick. Steve's here for dinner. Grandpa talks with Steve and discovers that Steve is a widower with no family, and no one knows that he's at the monster's house that night. He also tells Steve that Herman is sick and is about to die. Steve feels for him as Grandpa suggests that he should step in Herman's place once he's gone. Okay. And we're at dinner. And Steve was apparently a surprise. Grandpa brings up that he's a widow again and asks how he got through it.
One of the requirements is you make a family tree. Eddie, you ever make a family tree?
We tried it, but it took too long. Grandpa's been alive forever.
I get it!
Shut it, Nappa.
Steve kind of talks like Herman is already dead, and it's generally creepy. Lily and Herman step out to speak.
Why is that man in our house?
I was going to take his heart, and Grandpa wants to drink his blood.
Are either of those things going to happen in the dining room tonight?
I don't know, may not be the answer you're looking for.
Herman, neither of those things will happen in the dining room tonight or in front of Eddie ever.
I agree. That should be our goal.
Lily sighs and admits that they need to tell Eddie, and Herman admits to Lily about his heart. Together they both resign themselves that he needs another heart, but they need to still feel like a family. And we're back to the table, where Eddie announces he's a vegetarian, and yeah, it's weird. Grandpa's against this and tries to get him to eat. And Eddie casually announces,
My grandpa's gonna eat you.
Is that happening tonight?
so very casual about it. Oh, you're about to be murdered. No big.
Hey, you don't really think your grandpa's gonna eat me, do you?
Yeah.
Nobody is eating Steve.
So they ask Marilyn to see Steve out while Lily talks to Grandpa and Herman talks to Eddie. Of course, the moment Lily turns around, Grandpa is gone. That takes us to the door, and
So nice to meet you. Yeah. Run!
What?
Grandpa?
No, 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 Grandpa! Stop it! This is not how you treat company. Listen, Aunt Lily has expressly forbid you eating anyone in the house. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! He's a
ow. So that leads us to the roof, where Herman tells Eddie that he's a werewolf. Eddie is reasonably despondent about it, but Herman tries to talk him through it and be supportive. Eddie is upset by all this and runs off, and the strain of it breaks Herman's heart. Literally. Thankfully, Grandpa already killed Steve, so he gives Herman the heart and drinks the blood, and as a result, looks years younger. And finally, Lily and Herman are walking with Eddie, talking about having gotten him a pet to watch out for him and to watch out for everyone else when he transforms on the full moon. Eddie is skeptical until he meets Spot.
Do I get to keep him?
So, the question remains, where do I start with this video? Overall, I can see why it didn't get picked up. It's quirky and admittedly a little awkward at times, not to mention the pacing is a little bit off, but the humor is spot on. Grandpa's one-liners are great, and honestly, I feel that Marilyn steals her scenes and embraces the creepiness of the entire family. All in all, it had Brian Fuller's stunning visuals, which is nothing to scoff at. And, you know, stuff didn't happen for reasons a lot, so compared to what I reviewed last time, this one's pretty solid. So, it wasn't picked up. But, apparently NBC is open to the idea of having yet another reboot sometime in the near future, and I, for one, couldn't be more excited. So, wrap-up time. When it comes to pilots, I'm not going to give it a 5-point rating. I'm just going to give it a was good to go or should have stayed. And when it comes to Mockingbird Lane, It should have stayed. Well, I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't know when I'm going to be back because the thing which I had on the docket next, it kind of can't find it. So if anyone knows where I can find the 6 episodes of Drive, hit me up on Twitter, @FatedSaint. Other than that, I think I'm going to end up going with my backup plan, which is frightening to say the least. Well, we'll see, and I'll see you next time, because I'm your boy Kami, and happy Halloween.